Thank you very much. Nathan White, co-founder and CEO of HealthLytix. A little bit about me. I was a faculty in the radiology department at UCSD, background in biomedical engineering and cognitive science. Not only do I have a personal connection, having lost family members to both prostate cancer and colorectal cancer, but having been in the department, attending numerous tumor boards, working with radiologists, it's amazing to me that there were so many patients that came in with such late-stage metastatic disease, and that given the sophistication of our imaging equipment, why is it that radiologists are having such a difficult time still diagnosing cancer? So I left the university and started this company along with my former advisor in 2017. We just got FDA clearance for our AI platform for early cancer detection. And we're raising a $7 million Series A to achieve profitability and scale. The global opportunity for cancer diagnosis, as we all know, is very large, projected to be about $160 billion in 4 to 5 years. Interestingly, the United States has dominated this market, and cancer imaging still remains one of the largest market shares. And the demand for this is fueled by our aging population and the increased incidence of cancer. Obviously, the holy grail in cancer is early detection, and there's still a very large unmet need for solutions that are accurate, non-invasive, and low cost. Our solution is called restriction spectrum imaging. It's a patented AI-based platform with broad oncology applications. It's supported by over 20 peer-reviewed publications. We've demonstrated increased sensitivity and specificity to clinically significant cancer, and the improvement in the accuracy and consistency of the radiology reads. How does it work? Without boring you with too much MR physics, all MRI is based on the magnetic properties of water, tissue water. Your tissue is made up of 90% water, and it's subtly magnetic when you put it in a large field. Right now, clinical images are created without any knowledge or understanding of the tissue architecture underneath it. And that leads to very, very nice, high-resolution images, but the information there is primarily water content. What we've done is apply intelligence to how we're teasing apart the MRI signal to focus in on that water that's trapped within the cancer cells themselves. That allows us to generate these images with really high sensitivity and specificity to cellular tissue, high-grade cancer. This solution is delivered through our HIPAA-compliant, secure platform. It sits behind the hospital firewall. It takes data directly from their MRI machine. It's vendor agnostic. It doesn't interrupt the workflow. The post-processing is done within 3 to 5 minutes. The images and radiology reports go right back to the radiologists at the point of care, and in this case, at the hospital PACS. We just achieved 510(k) clearance for prostate cancer. That's our initial disease target. Right now, every 17 minutes, a man will die of prostate cancer. It is literally the last organ where biopsies are still performed blind and random based on a suboptimal PSA blood test. It's estimated that over $8 billion a year is spent on unnecessary biopsies on over 1 million men. And right now, there's a fundamental paradigm shift going on with prostate cancer diagnosis where MR is playing an increasingly powerful role. Right now in the United States, the standard of care is to use MR only after a negative biopsy comes back. You're still at high risk given your PSA. They want to go try to find cancer with imaging. Doesn't make much sense. In Europe, the standard of care now is shifted towards using MR up front before you plan a biopsy. And it's just a matter of time before MR is being used throughout that whole care pathway. So we're really well, positioned with this technology. And it's Medicare reimbursable under standard CPT codes for radiology post-processing. Here's a typical example what a radiologist is faced with. This is cribriform pattern cancer, very aggressive, very hard to spot in traditional MR. This is called multiparametric MRI. Radiologists need to be very highly trained to read this. With our solution, the lesion shows up very nicely with a high degree of contrast. Again, this is non-invasive, 3 or 4 minute scan. Here's an example of this technology in a challenging situation with a UroLift device placed in the prostate. Again, this type of environment makes traditional imaging very complex and difficult to read, and the cancer itself shows up very nicely with our technology, and in this case, extending outside of the prostate, extraprostatic extension, which is on its way to metastasizing. Here's an example of a false positive. Again, it's not surprising that radiologists will also have a fair degree of false positive rate. In this case, a patient went on for biopsy, came back negative, and there's no signal on our RSI MRI. We understand that there's a lot of questions for referring physicians, not just radiologists, in the whole care pathway. So we've built AI and machine learning platform to understand not only who's at risk based on your genetics, when you should start PSA screening, but once you get PSA screening, leveraging your genetics and PSA information for understanding your personal risk of when you should get imaged. Once you get the imaging done, combining all of that information together to assist that urologist with knowing which area to target with the needle biopsy. The technology is broad. It was actually invented for brain cancer, understanding the difference between radiation necrosis and recurrent tumor. We plan to get FDA clearance for breast cancer in Q4 of this year. And then we're looking into female pelvis, ovarian, and cervical cancer. We have core value propositions not only to patients, but providers and payers. Ultimately, we're detecting more significant cancer. We're not detecting insignificant cancer. Because it's non-contrast, 3-4 minute scan, you can do 3 of these scans in the time you typically would do a prostate MR today, and that's resulted in an estimated $10,000 in gross profit to the hospital. Payers, it benefits because it's a lower scan cost and ultimately a lower cost of care when you're detecting cancer early. We're working with some of the best cancer hospitals in the United States, MGH, MD Anderson, Cleveland Clinic. These are non-sponsored trials. We've, again, as I mentioned, resulted in over 20 peer-reviewed publications. We're showing some very great early market traction with our software. Our go-to-market strategy is both direct and leveraging distribution partners in the space. We're going after a tiered annual subscription license based on the number of scanners and projected volume at that institution. We're getting CE marking for the technology in Q4 of this year to tap into the European market and prostate, as well as I mentioned before, getting 510(k) approval for breast MRI. Again, very, very positive feedback from our physicians who see really the value in this. And I just attended a conference a few months ago where the consensus was the tsunami is coming. MR is going to be playing a huge role in prostate cancer diagnosis, not surprisingly. And this technology is fitting very well into that need. Our board of directors includes Anders Dale, my former advisor, really a prominent neuroscientist and radiology research faculty member at UCSD, peer-reviewed over 400 publications. He's also founder of Cortex Labs, a profitable radiology AI company. Bob Mirabella joins us from GE Healthcare, the former CEO of their global diagnostic imaging business. And we're also joined by 10 full-time employees, professionals from product development, engineering and quality from established medical device companies, ResMed, Philips, and we're joined by a large and world-renowned advisory team as well. Our exit strategy now, this fits very well into an M&A target into both the device manufacturers on the imaging side and also companies that manufacture the surgical equipment themselves. We raised $4 million as a seed round, and we're targeting a $7 million A round by spring of this year. We have $2 million of that committed in. And the use of those funds would be to establish really a larger sales and marketing team, as well as to support the FDA clearance for breast cancer and our CE marking for prostate cancer. So with that, I'm happy to take additional questions back in the room. Thank you.